Since 2007, I have been helping churches get better at marketing and getting the word out there about their church. And I have to tell you, it literally breaks my heart to see how many churches are throwing their budgets away trying to use marketing methods that just don't work anymore. So to help fight the good fight, today we are going to put together a church marketing tier list where we rank all of the major church marketing strategies, and I'm going to tell you what I think about them and whether you should be doing them this year. Let's do this. Well, hey guys, I'm Thomas here from ReachRight. We put out new content like this every week, and so if this is the kind of thing that helps you and your church, it would mean a lot to me if you would hit that subscribe button. 16 years is a really long time to be helping churches do marketing. And over the years, we have explored every marketing opportunity that we could possibly get our hands on and tried to do a deep dive to see if it could actually help churches reach more people and grow. Back in 2015, we started ReachRight to do exactly this, to help churches reach people the right way. So what we want to do is give you a breakdown of all of the major marketing channels that we see churches using today and tell you what we think of them and whether you should be doing them or not. We're rating each one of these using three main criteria. Effectiveness, how good is it at actually reaching people? Effort, how much work does it take for churches to use this marketing channel? And expense, how expensive is it and is it a good value for churches? Now I want to say this too before we get into it, like all good tier lists, you are probably going to disagree with some of my assessments. If you do, let me know down in the comments and tell me what your favorite marketing channel is for your church and where you have seen the best results. Now let's get into it. The first one we want to talk about is Billboard Advertising. Now, I have a sweet spot in my heart for Billboard Advertising. I remember when I first moved to Austin, Texas to plant a church back in 2007, and the local mega church had a giant billboard right there on the main highway, I-35. And it just seemed like that was a tool that got a lot of eyeballs. And so when it comes to effectiveness, it can be great for churches that want to reach a lot of people. The problem with billboards is that they can be so expensive. And for most churches, it's just out of reach. So for larger churches, as a caveat, maybe it would be a higher tier. But for the average church of somewhere between 50 and 300, I would say billboards are probably just out of reach, so I'm gonna put them into the C tier. Next up, we have email marketing. Now, email marketing gets a lot of flack because it's just not very cool seeming. Email just feels so old school. We've been doing it for like 30 years now. There must be something new that's come along that's better, and I'm here to say that no, not really. Email still is a fantastic tool. It's the one thing that most people still check every single day, and there really isn't a better way to communicate. When we talk about email marketing for churches, it means things like your weekly newsletter, but I think where it really shines is with helping visitors get assimilated. Think of it as people that are curious about your church, or maybe they've visited once, having a good email system worked out that actually emails them at regular intervals and helps them make the leap to become fully committed parts of your church. It is such an important tool. I'm gonna put it right into the A tier, I think. I wrestled with it being up into S, and it's close, but I think I'm gonna put it squarely in A tier. And when I say A tier, it's not anything that a church should ever ignore, but I think you reserve the S tier for something that's a little bit higher on that. But email marketing, bar none, is one of the most important things that you can be doing. Next up is direct mail. Now, when I started in the church marketing industry back in 2007, direct mail was the king. It was organizations like Outreach.com, and you could get mailers sent to everybody in your zip code that invited them to specific events, specifically around Easter. I know my church used to always do a big Easter promotion, and you could take advantage of nonprofit mailing rates, and it was actually something that was really useful. And I would have at one point put direct mail into the S tier. In fact, there was a time where people would often tell us they weren't gonna do some form of digital marketing because they put all of their money into direct mailers. But that time is about 20 years ago. Is it useless? No, I still think there's some real value to it, and it could be something a church would consider if they are using other methods well, but right now, I think it probably belongs right in the C tier. The problem with it is that it's really hard to measure. If you ever ask someone, hey, how many people came because you sent out a direct mailer, that's really a hard question to answer because you don't really know. That's really one of the great things about the digital methods we'll talk about more, is that you can know exactly what's working, what isn't, and you get that instant feedback to help you make course corrections and reach more people for less money. So direct mail was an S tier. and slowly move down. I put it squarely into the C tier today. Next up is the Google Ad Grant. And this one for me has to be the S tier marketing choice, like top of the S tier. If you don't know, the Google Ad Grant gives $10,000 every month to any church that is set up as a nonprofit, and you can use that money on the Google Ads platform to get totally free ads, no cost to the church whatsoever. Imagine it's like a $10,000 a month marketing budget for every church. Large churches, small churches, everybody is eligible for it. There's a few criteria, and I'll mention this. If you don't know if your church is eligible for it or not, we have a super simple eligibility checker. It takes about 45 seconds to fill it out. Answer a few questions. You'll know once and for all if you qualify for that or not. I'll leave a link to that down in the description below. But the Google Ad Grant is hands down, I think, the lowest hanging fruit when it comes to church marketing. As far as effectiveness, it's definitely at the top. As far as cost, it's $10,000 for free, so it's fantastic. As far as effort, it can be a little bit challenging for someone who's new to it to manage it. So we do see a lot of churches using services like ours to help them manage the free $10,000 a month. So even if you are paying someone a fraction of that in order to manage the grant, it still is a really good value because you're getting $10,000 of ads for much less money. We here at ReachRight have helped literally hundreds of thousands of people get connected into churches because of the Google Ad Grant. We have seen its effect firsthand. I cannot put it anywhere but the S tier. It is probably the best and lowest hanging fruit when it comes to church marketing right now. Next up, we have organic social media marketing. And when I say organic, what we mean is social media that you don't have to pay for. It's just you getting out there and creating posts and creating content that's so good that people start to get interested in your organization and they start visiting on Sundays and getting connected with your church. This is a fantastic way to do church marketing, but it fails in a couple of areas. On the effectiveness side, yes, if you have a large social media following, yes, it's fantastic. You can get great results. But on the cost side, don't think that just because you're not paying Facebook or Instagram directly, that doesn't cost you anything. The fact is that it takes so much effort to do social media well that it will almost certainly cost you something to execute it. I gotta tell you, those churches that you follow on social media that have really big followings and great TikTok videos, or their Instagram is always a hotbed for conversation, they have teams of people that are managing those social media accounts and creating content for them. And these are actual expenses. Having people on your staff that are creating this kind of content is something that will cost your church real money. So for me, I put organic social media right into the B tier for most churches. It's something you should be doing. You should have a presence on these kinds of channels. But to be a primary method of reaching new people, I think it's an uphill battle for most medium-sized churches. Next up, we have local SEO. SEO, I mean search engine optimization. And when we talk about local SEO, it's primarily people looking for churches in their area. It's for people typing things like churches near me into Google to see what comes up and find out where they're gonna visit this Sunday. People that are doing these kinds of searches are very interested in attending. So I think it's a very valuable exercise for churches to be investing into this area. Also, if you know what you're doing, it doesn't really cost anything. The only downside I see when it comes to local SEO is that I find that it's much more effective for urban churches than it is for rural churches. With suburban churches, it's still pretty effective, but it's somewhere in between. The reason why is that if you're in a less populated area, there just isn't a huge volume of people typing in churches near me or churches in my city every single week. But if you live in a major metropolitan area, you can count on a steady flow of visitors if you do this right. I'd say for churches in urban areas, this is like an S tier. I think for churches that are in suburban areas, it's like an A tier, and for churches in rural areas, it's probably a B tier. So I think averaging them all together, I think it falls right into the A tier for the average church in our country. Real quick, if you want to see how your church ranks in local SEO, we have a totally free tool that I'll leave a link to down in the description, and we'll email you a report of exactly where your church stands. Next up, we have print advertising, and by that I mean things like newspapers and I guess magazines, local publications, yellow pages, these kinds of things. I have been in this industry long enough to have people tell me, no, we're not going to do a website because we actually put most of our effort into yellow page ads. Well, I think you probably know this. Those times are over. Print media is not something that I think most churches should be investing in. I won't even say much about this, but it falls squarely into the D tier for me. The one exception to that may be things like invite cards and flyers that you actually give to people that would help them with word of mouth advertising, which is probably S tier, but we didn't include word of mouth in this conversation. So those might help it a little bit, but I still think by and large, print advertising, its day has come and gone, and so you're probably at a D tier when it comes to that. Even for your Easter ads in the newspaper, there may be some exceptions. Maybe you'll let me know in the comments that in our small town, everybody still reads the paper. But for the average church, I just have to put print advertising right into D tier. Next up, we have paid social media advertising. So we talked about organic, which is where you just hustle and make really great content. And in paid advertising, what you're actually doing is making really great content, but you're paying to expand the reach. Now, this isn't a set it and forget it kind of approach or necessarily an easy thing to do, but when it comes to actual effectiveness, it might be one of the most effective ways to introduce people to your church. The great thing about paid social media advertising is all the levers that you can pull to hone your specific audience to make sure it's the exact right person that is seeing your content there. At my church, we actually did a Halloween festival where we invited the entire community to come out, and we actually made Facebook event ads for this. And because we held it at the local community center, it was something that did amazing, and we were able to get people to our event for about 45 cents per visitor. That's unheard of if you know anything about marketing, to see people walk through your doors, or in this case, the doors of a community center, and engage with us for 45 cents per person was fantastic. And these kinds of opportunities are still all over the place with social media marketing. Now, when I talk about this, I don't mean just boosting your organic posts and just hoping that people that like your page and their friends are gonna see it, but if you actually take the time to create a specific audience that you feel like your church is best able to serve and your messaging will resonate with, this can be a super effective tool. So I'm gonna say, based on effectiveness alone, it's S tier, but I think because of cost and some of the effort that it takes to do it, it knocks it down just one peg. I'm gonna put it into the A tier, but something that I think every church should be working with right now. Next up is long form video marketing. And what I mean by this is platforms like YouTube getting your long form videos onto it. YouTube is the second most searched site every single day, right behind Google, its parent company. What's great about long form video marketing is that churches are already making long form video every single week. And if you're actually recording those sermons, you can get long form content onto channels like YouTube with minimal effort. There are some strategies you need to employ if you actually want to get traction on YouTube, because by and large, most churches just have sermons on there to serve their members. But if you do a few things right, you can actually make it much more of an outreach focus on YouTube. I actually have a video all about how you can optimize your YouTube videos to do better at this long form video marketing method. Now, while I am a huge fan of long form video marketing, I think every church should probably be doing it, at least to some extent. I recognize that it's not great at getting visitors in the door right away. It's more of a brand awareness play. So it's something that will get results if you continually invest in it for not days or weeks, but I'm talking about years and years. But once it starts to gain traction, you will start to see it snowball, and you'll get more and more people seeing your video content and more people connecting with your church. But remember, YouTube is more of an international platform. So if your target is exclusively people in a small town, well, the odds of them showing up on a Sunday will be relatively slim. But still, I think it's a valuable tool for churches to pursue. I'm gonna put it into B tier, but it's at the very top of B tier for me. I would think about A, but I think it's just one peg below because it doesn't have that local specific reach that you really want to focus on with church marketing. Next up, we have short form video marketing. So when I'm talking about that, it's turning your camera the other way and having vertical video, and usually videos that are under 60 seconds. It's on platforms like TikTok, Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels, and YouTube Shorts. Right now, as I'm filming this video, I think this is probably your strongest social media opportunity. For most churches, because we're already creating long form video content in our sermons every week, there's nothing stopping us from taking that long form video content on YouTube and turning it into short form vertical video content that people are consuming at record rates. We've seen churches that average a few dozen views on a normal Instagram post. They can get tens of thousands of views on an Instagram reel, but in my experience, it can be kind of inconsistent. You'll get a few hundred views a few times in a row, and then once every year, you'll get one that has 30,000 views. You have these enormous explosions, and so it is something that takes a lot of effort, and to get the best results with short form video, consistency is the key. We think churches should do somewhere between 2 and 3 short form vertical videos every single week and never deviate from that path if you want to see real results there. So it is a kind of high effort method, but I think it's so effective right now that I'm comfortable putting it into the A tier. Is your church using short form video? Let me know down in the comments below if you think I'm off on this, if it's higher or lower. I'd love to hear what you think. Next up, we have radio advertising. And again, this is kind of like billboards for me. It's in the same boat. I think that it can be very expensive to do it depending on the channel that you're advertising on. I think a lot of churches are tempted to advertise on the Christian radio station, which to me is kind of counterintuitive because you want to be reaching people that don't listen to Christian music in most cases, but I could be convinced that maybe there is a case for it in some circumstances. But the problem is that it just reaches such a broad audience, it's a broadcast method, that it generally gets pretty expensive and it's really hard to track your results. You'll never really know if someone is coming because they heard you on a radio ad or they happen to see your Facebook ad. Radio advertising, I think, maybe has a place for big events, for very large churches, but I think for the average church, I have to keep it down, and I think I have to put it squarely into D tier. Next up, we have organic SEO. Now, before I was talking about local SEO, that means targeting people looking for churches near me. Organic SEO is more about ranking for individual keywords that are much broader in scope. And while organic SEO is a very valuable tool, I don't think it's the best fit for most churches because it has the same problem that I talked about with long form video, is that it reaches too broad of an audience and it doesn't have the local focus that most churches are looking for. This week at church, I'm actually preaching about Luke chapter 12 and Jesus's commandment for us to not worry. And that's a great topic for someone to want to dig into and learn more about. And I will optimize my sermon and the sermon page on our site to make sure it has really great content that will rank when people are looking for Luke chapter 12 and Jesus on worry and some of those kinds of keywords. The problem is that in my area, that is not being searched very often, but on a national level, it probably is. It's something that could move your church forward if you want to reach a national audience or you have a really great online service, but because it doesn't have the local bent, it's not something that I suggest churches put most of their effort into. So, well, as an overall marketing method, I think it's one of the best things you can do. For local churches specifically, I have to put it into the C tier. And finally, the last one we're gonna go through is TV ads. Funny story, I actually got my start in church marketing for a company that did primarily television ads. It was founded by Joel Osteen's dad, who saw a bunch of commercials out there and said, hey, why are secular companies doing such better commercials than we're doing here in the church? And so he bankrolled our first set of commercials that we did as a company back before websites existed. And that was really one of the few options that churches had that wanted to reach a broad audience. But today, I think this is probably the bottom of the D tier. It's not something that I think most churches should put any effort into. Funny enough, I actually own the rights to all of those commercials that were bankrolled back in the 80s and 90s, and they are kind of funny to watch. I don't really recommend that any church uses them today, but I have to put TV ads, even though it's kind of where I got my start. I don't think any church really has any business doing it. Perhaps you could make a few exceptions for the largest churches in the country, and I love what they're doing over at He Gets Us and the way they're using television ads to reach people with the gospel, but for the local church, it just doesn't make sense. What does make sense is learning more about church marketing, and we actually have a video that will walk you through exactly what I would do if I was marketing my church. It serves as an ultimate guide, and I think it'll really help you nail your church marketing.